Please talk about the SEC. There's nothing to talk about. Nothing at all. I see all these people say, well, can you go and prove you're not a security? Guys, everything is a security right now, according to the SEC. They would say Bitcoin and Ethereum were a security if they get away with it. Because the reality is that the way that the 1933 investment contracts define, how test is defined, is overly broad. And what happens is they litigate it if they really care. Baseball cards could be securities if they really wanted them to be. Why not? When you have policy through enforcement instead of legislation, it leaves a catastrophic harm to an industry. And normally, what happens when you have a well functioning government is whenever a new technology comes, like we saw with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and the NSFAUP and other things that were passed in the 1990s, like with the internet, is that the legislative arm of the government shows up and says, our rules that were written 70 years ago cannot possibly have imagined and comply with this new industry that exists. The United States, we regulate things by boxes. You're a currency, FinCEN, and BSA and this other stuff. You're a commodity, CFTC. You're a security, SEC, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what do you do when you have an asset that could be everything all at once? It can be a security, it can be a commodity, it can be a loyalty point, it can be a representation of real estate, it can be intellectual property, it can be a collector's item, it can be an identity, and it can be all of those things at the same time. Who regulates that? So you're in full compliance with the CFTC and FinCEN, all these other things. And this other guy comes and says, come in and register. Come in and register. How? There's no path to do it. There's no explanation on how to do it. When you go in and ask, they say, we can't tell you. Ask your lawyer. Ask the lawyer. They say there's no path. Coinbase tries to do this. 2021, they file an S1. The SEC looks at it and says, you know what? Your business model is okay to expose to retail investors, millions of retail investors. You can sell stock to them. We will let you do an IPO. They explain their listing, all the assets, including ADA, were on that. The SEC checkmark. And then 2 years later, after talking to them like 24 times, they come back and say, oh, I can't believe you're selling these cryptocurrencies on your exchange. Well, we don't understand this model. You guys are an unregistered broker dealer, and we have to take you down. They say what the business model is exactly the same with the business model that you approved and allowed us to sell our stock to retail investors with. You spent a year and a half with us and millions of dollars of legal fees talking to you guys. Why then wouldn't everything be okay? No, now it's not. And I said, well, what about all the time, the 2 years we talked to you, we have a broker-dealer license. We certainly could figure out a way to do this. You ghosted us. And now you're suing us and Kraken and Bittrex and everybody else. What do you do? The courts obviously will resolve this, but the problem with the executive branch is they know that if they sue people, resolution takes 2 to 3 years, and even when they lose, they just go nee, and they just keep going until the legislative branch stops them. This is a failure of Congress in the United States. They need to pass a law, and they need to set clear rules, and the vast majority of people in the industry will follow those rules. The rules are not clear. It's impossible to comply with them. And I would love a memo to be drafted to show how, because it's not possible. And also to argue that every single thing is a security. If the founders all die and the protocol still operates and runs, and the value of it is based upon the efforts of a collective of thousands, if not tens of thousands of independent people, how is that a security? We already have a term for that. It's called a commodity. If you kill any person on the planet, any person at all, the value of gold, regardless if that's a CEO of Barracks or the owner of the largest gold mine in the world, is still going to be there. Why? Because gold, its value is a collective of a marketplace. And the participation of these things are permissionless. Who comes to me and asks, can I build on Cardano? You have to ask Microsoft to do something with their products. You have to sign their licenses to do something with their products. It's centralized. But in a commodity, anybody at any time can wake up and say, you know what? I'm going to grow some wheat. You know what? I got some gold over there. I'm going to take it and sell it in a global marketplace. That's why the CFTC exists. Kind of makes sense, right? These are open protocols. But then they come in and say it's a security. Okay, well, what the hell does that mean if it's decentralized? How does Bitcoin register? Oh, but it's not. Then explain to me the fucking difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum and Cardano and the rest of the gang. Explain it to me. Like I'm 5 years old. Run the goddamn Howey test on it and show me the difference between the two. Tell me, is there an expectation of return with the goddamn orange pill moon boys? It's there. There's so many different planks and angles that you can take a look at this thing from. And by the way, if you subpoena an attack about 3 different entities, you could perform a 51% attack on Bitcoin because that's the way the hash power works. But it's decentralized, apparently. And Team Orange gets a complete pass. It's a pathetic fucking joke. It's an absolutely pathetic joke. You know, and it would be funny if not for the fact that hundreds of millions of dollars of legal fees have been exhausted in this Pyrrhic war that's being fought on the industry. And they'll lose court case after court case, as they already have and will continue. And then at some point, it'll stop. There will not be an apology. There's not going to be any money that comes back, and we'll just move on. Like we did with the Kennedy assassination. We'll just move on. Like we did with Vietnam. We'll just move on. Like we did with Iraq and Afghanistan. We'll just move on like we're doing right now with COVID. We'll just move on like we did with all the things that have happened in the last 50, 60, 70 years in the United States history. It has to stop. It honestly has to stop. Why do I praise libertarians come in? Because the only people that seem to think the only people seem to improve the situation, the people that are unraveling the government. It's not accountable anymore. People harm people, they get away with it, and they just move on, and nothing changes. I'm tired of it. I think our industry is tired of it. The entire reason cryptocurrencies exist is not because somebody woke up and said, man, tokens on the internet is such a good idea. The entire reason cryptocurrencies exist is that we're trying collectively to reestablish the social contract, because the social contract is horrifically broken. If the people in charge are unelected, unaccountable, and don't ever have to prove to us, the beneficiaries of the public trust, that they're doing good for us. And when they screw up, nothing happens to them. They get a promotion, they get elected to higher office, and we just have to move on as a society. That is not a government for the people, by the people, of the people. That is something else. That looks a lot more like the thing that we rebelled against when we founded this goddamn country. So it will change because we don't have any money left. We're $31 trillion in debt. Everything is collapsing down, and the American empire can't sustain itself. So you run out of money, eventually it's going to fall apart. And we all know that, And it's just sad because so many people have invested so much effort, time, money, and blood and tears and sweat into trying to preserve and protect and empower the American dream. And by the way, it's not the American people that are doing this. We want to change. If you poll people, over 80, 90% of the American people are fundamentally unhappy with the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, and want different leaders and different governance. Yet, the American government stays exactly the same. Doesn't change. The American people are good people. Go all around the United States, you find very hardworking people, honest people, high integrity people. It's hard to go to a country and go to Gillette, Wyoming. It's -15, -20 outside, 100-mile-an-hour winds. And they're out there working outside, building something because they got a family to take care of. That's the American people in a nutshell. That's who we are. We get it done. We build the best companies. We build the best infrastructure. We're the smartest people, not because we're born smart, because we import smart. If there's someone smart outside, somewhere else in the world, we find them, grab them, bring them here. It doesn't matter where they're from. Be from Uganda, be from South Africa, they can be from Mongolia, Russia. We don't care. We'll bring them in, work with them. That's who we are. That's who we are at our core. And then we have this government, and it's a catastrophe. And it just harms and hurts so many people, and it never says it's sorry. It never says it's done something wrong. And there's no accountability anymore. It used to be the fourth estate was the media, and they'd hold the government accountable. They'd say, oh, look at what the government did. Pentagon Papers. They lied to you. Let's publish it. Let's talk about it. Now, oh, WikiLeaks. Evil Julian Assange. How dare you compromise our national security and talk about that stuff? It's a joke. It really is. So we'll change it. We'll fix it. There's two-prong approach. One is the blockchain stuff. It's really about social engineering. It's saying we're reinvent money. We're going to reinvent our voice. So change all the voting systems, reinvent identity and property rights. And that's a philosophical movement. We own the young. It might take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but Gen Z, they're not going anywhere. They're here in this movement because they understand this is fair. This is high integrity. You can't trust people anymore. They grew up with the internet. They see all the hypocrisy. They see news real time. The other prong of it is that the federal government is impossible to change. People say, Charles, why don't you run for president? What's the point? Obama can't change it and Trump can't change it. I'm sorry. There's no way to change it. Think about how powerful Obama was when he came into office. He had a super majority, 60 senators, super majority in the Congress. There's no filibuster. He could pass anything on a party line vote. We were on the back of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Didn't go after Wall Street. Iceland did. It's extraordinary. Trump comes into office, is unconnected to everything. Couldn't get anything done. Why? Because the beast does not permit change. The deep state's a thing. It exists. You can't vote your way out of it. So the only way to change it is a constitutional convention. That's the escape clause the founding fathers were smart enough to put into the Constitution. You need 2/3 of the states to come together, and it will happen. And the whole government needs to be rewritten, and we'll write a new constitution. We're learning how to do that right now, the Cardano ecosystem, but goddamn, the American people have to do it. And the world will rejoice because we can return to being a bastion of democracy and actually be something better than what we were. Crypto is the deep state. It's the antidote, my friend. As someone from Croatia, Vivek, like cake. I always think of Vivek from Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind. Seems to be best candidate. Young person. How about we have somebody that was born like in the second half of the 20th century as opposed to the first half as our leader? The central banks need to go. Yes, sir, they do. Nice. I went to the summit in Dubai a few weeks ago. Incredible. Thank you so much for being there. We really enjoyed it.